This is important stuff.
This meeting is being recorded.
All right.
Okay,
Got it.
we're there. Okay.
All right.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm Alexander Lawrence, the Portable Infinite, New Noise. I'm like, since I was born in '64. I mean, I started going to shows in '79, '80, and a lot of the punk bands were sort of over by then. I mean, they still existed, but the initial excitement around, especially like the LA and the New York and the London punk scenes had already kind of passed. So that we kind of, there was kind of like this weird period where something new was happening. And, when I look back to early '80s, I mean, there was like New Wave Theater, there was labels like Bemis Sprain and Frontier Records and Dr. Dream and all these interesting labels
Right.
and yeah. So you were before Mnemonic Devices happened, or did I say it right again? Were you playing in punk bands or just regular?
No, I didn't. Our thing was completely punk in the sense that neither I nor the bass player Linnea, who we started the band together, had ever played anything before. I mean, I played trumpet when I was a kid, but we were not musicians. So we just took the punk thing and said, let's start a band.
So were you Huntington Beach, or I know Ann like lived in Seal Beach, where there seemed like a lot of people were Long Beach or Huntington Beach and Seal Beach.
Yeah, well, the way it worked was this. Right after high school, I'm from New York originally, but grew up out in the San Fernando Valley, mainly Canoga Park, Chatsworth. As soon as I graduated from high school in '75, we moved down to Huntington Beach for my mom's work. And I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I was working a bit. I had a friend whose father was in the music industry, and he got his son a job at Island Records, and he would call me up when he needed help. So I was going up there and helping sometimes, and kind of going to what we used to call junior college back then, Orange Coast College, that kind of thing, and didn't really know what I was doing. It was kind of weird. Orange County, it's a strange place back then. Friends of my sister introduced me to the bass player. They were like, you guys both like the same bands. You like Sparks and Roxy Music and stuff like this. So you guys should go out. So we did. And then we eventually, after a little bit of stuff, went like, hey, we'll start a band too, because we could do that too, as long as everybody else is doing that. So that was kind of what we did. And yeah, Huntington Beach was interesting because, it was there in Orange County, which was known for being really conservative. But there was this underground stuff happening. The Crowd and their kind of precursor bands lived, around the corner. All these kids that would come by my house and go, what is that fucking jungle music you're playing? Suddenly we're in all these bands like the Blades and all this crap. I was like, oh yeah, that's that little kid that was making fun of me a couple weeks ago, that kind of deal. So it was interesting place.
Did you go to Edison High School?
I did not go. By the time we moved, I was out of high school. My sisters went there. Bass player went there. She used to hang out with Sandy West from the Runaways and stuff, all that kind of thing. But I didn't know anybody. I moved down there right after high school. So like I say, I was basically just isolated essentially. I didn't know anybody really.
Because I mean, my brother also went to Edison High School, and he went to high school with Sandy West in '75, and that was already kind of happening, when like you said, Sparks and the Golden Bear was around, which was kind of like a Huntington Beach version of the Troubadour, and then soon the Cuckoo's Nest kind of came along, and maybe I don't know,
right.
At least '79 it was there, right?
Yeah, I'm really bad at remembering how things happen. That's why I was like, oh, you want to talk to me? Because I don't keep diaries and stuff, so my memory gets a little bit screwed up. What I remember about that period was kind of what I think you were saying, how stuff had already happened. Like by the time it reached there, a lot of it was already over. Like and it was hard for us to discern what was new and what wasn't. Like, basically things like Magazine and stuff arrived at the same time there as the Sex Pistols did, for all intents and purposes. By the time, uh, you know, records made it over to Zed Records or whatever, there was this big lapse in time where some of these bands didn't exist by the time you could get a hold of their record, that kind of thing. So it was really hard to figure out what was going on. A lot of the original, LA bands were playing and stuff still. We played one of the one of the first times we played at Cuckoo's Nest, we played like with X and the Go-Go's and stuff. I think it was supposed to be Black Flag, but they flaked out, and somehow Jerry Roach decided we were the obvious fill-in, of course. But it was just kind of weird. It was like it wasn't as straightforward as it seems, time-wise. Stuff had happened in other places that was just starting to happen there, but then in ways, Orange County was like way ahead of the curve too. I mean, it was one of the places where, like all the hardcore stuff really took off.
It took a while for it to get released in records. I mean, you released this, I got the 12-inch here.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't my original copy. I mean, I bought this on eBay a few years ago because replacement. But I mean, back then, if you didn't have the record, you didn't have Spotify and all the stuff. A lot of people that would have liked something like Mnemonic Devices would have just real quick, and things could have happened. And I mean, there was all these venues. I mean, you guys played Fenders, you played.
We played essentially everywhere. I mean, I think the only places we never actually played were, at least of the obvious ones, where we never played the Starwood and we never played the Whiskey.
Okay.
Played pretty much anything else you can ever think of, and a lot of them some of those places only existed for like one show. So it's like, yeah, we played at Gods, whatever the hell that was, and we played one of those, I forget what they're called. Were they? I don't know. It's something they used. They're kind of famous nowadays. They're ones they did a bunch of them out in the desert. What they're called, but we didn't do it at the desert. They had one at some building somewhere in Los Angeles, that kind of thing and stuff like that. So we played all over the place, and we played with, pretty much any kind of band you can think of. I mean, a lot of the bands were either, hardcore, like I say, Minutemen, stuff like that. Red Cross, or else they were like really super new wavy. So I don't know where we really fit into a lot of the things, but
did you play Club Lhasa?
Yeah, we played Lhasa Club several times. I can't remember the exactitudes of that one.
Yes, someone could probably find a flyer out there or something.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I got some flyers for that. I know we played there several times. That was a place we kind of liked. I think that might have been the place that had, one time we played one show that was with Nick Cave and Lydia Lunch. It might have been at the Lhasa. I'm not sure.
No, I think there was, I think what you're thinking of is there was like a poetry reading with Nick Cave and Henry Rollins. I think.
Yeah, something like that. I don't know. I didn't actually see the show besides ours. It was one of those where it's like, well, we're done. Now I got to drive home kind of thing. So,
but Michael from Red Wedding said he liked the Red Dog, which was downtown. Did you ever have any experiences with the Red Dog? It was like,
I don't remember that. I got to say, I do not know the Red Dog. That one escaped me. Al's Bar, played there a number of times.
Al's Bar.
Trying to think of what else. Yeah, like I say, most anywhere you can come up with. Roxy, I don't know, lots of places. Cuckoo's Nest lots of times since that was local, but yeah.
Well, you could see it in if you look at the New Wave Theater videos and stuff, you can kind of see that there was the bands that were kind of existed before, like Fear and Circle Jerk.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of like that had been around for a couple of years, and then there was kind of a new thing. It was more arty. It was like Mnemonic Devices, Fibonacci's. I mean, I guess you could follow.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, honestly, one of the things that I liked about punk, couple things. One was that you could do like what I said, which came for us from things like Roxy Music, where they called themselves non-musicians, at least some of them, Brian Eno and stuff, was like, you don't have to be a, because as much as I liked a lot of music that was sort of, progressive, like I was a big fan of, Old King Crimson and stuff like that. But so much of it was so pompous. But I liked the idea, at least, was really wide open. You could pretty much do anything. You could be the Screamers, no guitars at all. You could just be all synths and stuff. You could do whatever. So that was what I liked. It didn't necessarily last that way for very long. It became, regimented into, new wave. So you sound like this, hardcore, you sound like this, that kind of thing. But for a while, it was really wide open. You could do just about anything. And that was very cool,
Well, you had, so you and Linnea was together. I mean, how did you find all the rest of the guys in the band? I mean, back then it seemed like you would go to somewhere like Music Market or Zed Records and they would be a little.
That was pretty much it. Yep, we did that a lot. I don't know if we were like particularly choosy or what it was. We started off, the two of us, I think we were working at a warehouse maybe at that point, and there was a dude who played drums. So the three of us started jamming, so to speak. We aren't very good at jamming, but we would play some stuff. We'd kind of made up a few songs by then, and we'd play. And I think even before that, we tried, the guy was saying whose father was in the music business. He played guitar and he kind of showed me a few chords and stuff. And we tried to play with him, but he was like really fully into the whole Hollywood party scene and spent most of his time like really looted out, where, he just wasn't any good. You couldn't do anything with him. So he kind of fell by the wayside, literally croaked eventually, not too long after that. But we started playing with a guy that was a drummer. And then he was like, I want to sing. My brother's a drummer too. So he brought in his brother, Michael, who eventually was our drummer long term. But at that point, he was just kind of like tagging along with his brother, and he was like, 15 years old or whatever. So we started playing with Ron singing. And I think we actually, if I remember right, we actually played the first show that we played with that lineup at my friend's like Sweet 16 birthday party out in the Valley. And then I don't even remember what happened. That kind of fell apart. And I don't know, we went through a whole crap load of times trying to find people. We finally got basically our first real lineup. We had me and Linnea. We had a guy named Alan Schwartz Kent, who's still around. I don't think he does music anymore. He was singing. We had a guy named Danny Teeter who played keyboards. And I forget if Michael drummed for us. I don't think he did at first. We had a guy named David Haas who drummed. And so that was where we played our first real show, I think at the Cuckoo's Nest, probably, maybe. There may have been some weird dive bar on Newport Avenue that we played. But at that one, but the drummer didn't want to, he thought we weren't ready. So after we played the show, then he quit. So I was like, okay, now we have to recruit another drummer. And eventually Michael came back. We went through all of that. We played a fair amount of shows with Alan singing, and basically I think he just said finally is like, you guys are going a different direction and I'm not really going that way. So then we had no singer for a long time. I mean, we just were sitting there in our practice place practicing for like, I think about a year. This new wave band called the Corvairs said, we know the perfect person for you. This is Ann girl. She wears mini skirts and she likes Brian Eno. So she came over and it's like, oh, okay, this works. Started doing that with her.
What year was that?
Jesus, I don't know. I think it was probably 80 or something by then. I'm trying to remember because I'd kind of gotten not really a job, but we got free practice space at the Harris Sound Studios because I kind of worked as a whatever janitor, security guard, somebody to be there all the time, help when they would do little recordings and stuff like that. And we got free practices. I think it was like 1980 by then, probably. I mean, like I say, we had long periods where we couldn't find people. I think it's because, you know, we were really not like most bands. We didn't actually just like go in, turn everything up to 10 and jam. I mean, basically everything was orchestrated, not because we were trying to be like complex or anything, but because we didn't really know how to play very well. So we had to like figure out our parts and stuff. You know, it'd be like, okay, this is your part. You play this, you play that. And I don't think that attracted most people. And plus, we also, like I say, we didn't turn up our instruments. We were like the quietest band on earth. So people didn't really like seem to want to join up with us very much. So it always took us a long time when we'd lose somebody. So yeah.
Well, you mentioned the warehouse, that you worked at the warehouse. Did you know David Diamond of Berlin? Did he work?
We knew the Berlin people sort of vaguely. I mean, I didn't know him. I didn't know anybody. I mean, I'm like basically really shy, non-social person. So I like didn't hang out. That was one of the reasons too why we never like really made it big. Is aside from Ann, none of us hung out with anybody basically. So we didn't make, you know, the connections, and that's kind of like how you get a lot of shows and things like that. So she knew a lot of people. I like knew people to the sense that I'd met them at one point or another, but I didn't, you know, I didn't know them.
So I mean, the songwriting, you wrote all the songs, right? Or
I wrote all the songs, yes.
and
Which most people probably would not know. That was Anne was our double-edged sword. She was probably the thing that brought us the most attention, but also she really distracted people in a lot of ways for what we were trying to do. You know, like I say, we probably would have been nowhere without her. But yeah, everybody assumed she was running everything, and that was not the case at all. She was basically, you know, sort of a little puppet type thing. It's not really fair. She's her own person. I don't want to, but you know, basically, yeah. I mean, I wrote everything, other than, you know, people's solos and stuff for the most part they came up with. And like I say, that wasn't because I necessarily wanted to or was trying to run everything. It was because that was the only way. That was just how we worked. I'd come in with a thing and I'd be like, okay, here's how it goes. Teach it. People would kind of like, you know, figure out little parts and stuff, you know, and then they'd go, that's not good enough. Do something better. And it'd be like, well, okay, I'll try harder next time, you know.
well, it was your band. I mean, I think I first heard of the band. I was reading Flipside magazine, and it mentioned Anne was in this did a gig with Mark Soden. There was something called Youth Hostel or something. And
yeah, it could be. I don't know. She did lots of side stuff. She did stuff with Shadow Minstrels and Red Wedding, and I forget all. Like I say, she hung out with people. Alex Gibson, I think she did a couple things with.
well,
You know,
I mean, people are really. I think people one day are. I mean, should be interested. I mean, somebody should write a book about Peter Ivers and New Wave Theater, but they should also write about Bemis Brain and some of these weird labels that were around. I mean, a lot of people know that Hell Comes to Your House. I mean, Christian Death was on there. You guys, Red Wedding. I mean, there's a lot of bands I've never even heard of. I mean, I knew all this stuff. I mean, so Bemis, I asked Michael about this. Bemis Brain was just what kind of label? Was it just a small mom and pop garage thing, or
kind of, yeah, they kind of were and they kind of weren't. They were connected with, I'm trying to think what the hierarchy was. Bemis Brain was like part of Thunderbolt, which was part of, what the hell was it, the main thing that Green World was like the distribution.
I know.
They had a bunch of stuff that were kind of like all interconnected, and all the people that worked for Bemis Brain worked for like whatever it was. I forget if Green World was the main thing or if it was something else, but so they kind of had their hands in all these other things, but then they had their own little label as part of it too, which is kind of, that's what Bemis Brain was that sort of thing, kind of a little offshoot. So it was kind of connected. I mean, because I think they had whichever one the top tier of it was kind of connected to some major label-ish in some way, distribution or something. So it was, yeah.
Well, now there's a lot of, there's a lot of labels now that are small labels within it, like Warner Brothers or
Right.
So yeah, Bemis Brain was maybe one of those. Oh, okay. Okay, we might have to go extra time here.
Oh, I didn't know we were on a time limit. I'd shut up and get to the point if I knew. Sorry.
Well, we gotta. There might be a part 2 because I still have a lot of questions and stuff. So.
Okay. Well, I'm not going anywhere. So whatever works for you.
I mean, Tom Wilson was a producer that was in a lot of Bemis Brain and back then, and the guy that produced your record was eventually went over to Enigma, so there wasn't an idea the Mnemonic might drag over.
Yeah, that was okay. That was the one I was forgetting. Enigma was kind of like the top dog with all these other things in it. So yeah, I don't know. Our relationship with the label was kind of weird. That was another thing that I think essentially came about because of Anne. She knew people. She knew some of them. And they didn't like really come and recruit us or anything. It just kind of happened. But basically, we just went in live, played, essentially did a couple overdubs. They put out the record. We never saw a cent from it. I'm not saying they're bad people. We actually ended up getting an accounting from them because it was like, okay, I don't understand why there are no more of our records left when you pressed 1,500 records and there aren't any, and yet we haven't gotten paid anything. Well, we gave them all away, was basically what they said. They were all sent out for promos, but it was, I don't know, it was kind of weird. They weren't really that into us, I don't think, honestly. They pushed Outer Circle, and some of the other bands seemed to get a lot of attention. I'd literally go into the place and talk to them about various things, and they'd be, on the phone going yeah, Rodney, have you heard, Outer Circle? Have you heard this and that? And it's like, dude, I'm standing right here. You could mention us. We're selling, we were on we'd be getting these things from KNAC and stuff saying, you're in the hot whatever, or 25 or something. And, they didn't seem to push us at all. It was kind of weird to me, but
because I mean, you guys, you had this record, and then there was, I had heard Mexico and some of the songs that would have been on the first record, but then it just never happened.
Those were, we never had anything else come out. We put out the record, played a lot, got a fair amount of attention, had interest from some people, but nothing ever came of any of it. Like Mexico and Telltale Heart, where Dan Van Patten from Berlin took us in, just again, that was another Anne thing that just suddenly happened. We went in the studio, cut these 2 songs in a couple hours, and that was that. Tried to shop them around. Nothing ever happened. We got involved with, I'm making an idiot of myself. Manager of Suburban Lawns. What's his name?
Right.
Yeah. He came on as our manager for a bit. We'd been being managed from a little bit before the record up until then by Glenn Byron, who was a friend of the Crowds, who owned a blueprint shop in Huntington Beach, and he was a great manager. I mean, he really had good ideas, and we got a long ways under him. And then he decided he had to devote more time to his shop, and we hooked up with, again, I'm really feeling bad about this, but I can't remember his name, guy from Suburban Lawns, and he was like a swell guy, but completely different. We had really been trying to do the thing of we played a long time, we're good, we don't want to be opening for nobodies anymore. We want to headline shows. We want to play only good shows. They're going to get us somewhere. And he just had a completely different philosophy. It was like, okay, now you're opening for Joe Blow and the Nobodies, and now you're going to play in something. So that didn't last very long. But basically, the upshot of it is nobody ever really expressed much interest. We did a number of other recordings with Max Solomon, the guy that um, he hooked us up with, who had his own home studio. Most of the other things that you can now download and stream and whatever came from those. We did a couple sessions there, but just basically, I don't know. We didn't really fit with anything. We were, the typical thing. We weren't punk enough for punks. We're too punk for mainstream people. We got to hear those famous lines like, I don't hear a single, that kind of crap, So it's like, well, whatever.
Well, Mnemonic Devices, it definitely has an identifiable sound. I mean, you hear, when you hear the music of that time, you kind of like go that, yeah, that's them. They kind of do this kind of cabaret thing. Like a lot of people in the 80s, like Mark Allman and Gavin Friday and Nick Cave and Tom Waits came along and did like a similar thing.
Yeah, I suppose I can't say we were really trying for that. I think that was largely Ann's influence that it came across that way. And, we really tried to, honestly, we tried to rein her in because, well, really, seriously, I mean, that's why I say she was a double-edged sword. She was really good at doing Ann, but it made it seem like it was, Ann and a backing band, and we were much more into the whole idea of being a band and having everybody being kind of, equal. The unfortunate part about that was we had no stage persona, whereas she did. So, it's like, but we kept trying, that we had this constant thing of like, okay, can you maybe not wear the, gypsy scarves this time and stuff? Just wear something that's a little, more like what we were wearing. And she'd be like, okay, yeah, sure. And then show up with, whatever. So it was hopeless, basically, and whatever.
I mean, and did, like, I have her record here.
Right.
She did go on and release other records in the 80s
Yeah.
and stuff. That's what she looks like in this picture.
Yeah.
And there's like the band that she kind of plays with, but yeah, she did go
Yeah,
on.
she did several of them, I think. I know she did at least two, maybe three. I forget. She had a much longer career than the rest of us.
Well, yeah, they have us on this time thing, so let me stop this one, and then I'll call you right back, and I'll send you.
Okay.
So everybody stay there for part 2 coming right up.
Okay.
Let's see. Okay, stop. Okay.